The laughter reached me on my phone before it made it to my ears. I sat in the back room of my parents' tiny apartment, the bed pressed against my knees and the walls swallowing every vibrating note I tried to force from my practice violin. Outside my window, Mexico City roared with nightly traffic, but inside, a newer kind of noise was forming, a digital one transmitted through my cracked screen. My cousin had tagged me in a video on Instagram. Hector Distroza Mozart with a laughing emoji. I watched myself in tight close-up, bow scraping, brow furrowed in concentration, my notes wincing under fluorescent light. A squeaky phrase, a cringeworthy facial expression. You could hear someone snicker behind the camera, nigh al karaoke legger. He couldn't even make it in karaoke. The clip, all 20 seconds of it, looped under a flood of heartless comments. Que se dedique a otra cosa, he should try something else. El Perlman Mexicano allá, the Mexican Perlman sure. And my favorite, Hasta los gatos salen corriendo, even the cats would run. I put my phone on the faded comforter, chest full of a silence I'd only heard in churches or cemeteries. Somewhere behind the wall, my sister giggled and told Mama to watch the video too. My mom's sigh, deep and world-weary, floated through the thin air. I heard my father cutting carrots in the kitchen, arrhythmic and sharp. Whenever he thought I couldn't hear, he muttered prayers for me to find un trabajo de verdad, a real job. I picked up the violin, cheap wood flaking in odd corners, and cradled it under my chin again. My fingers hurt from the strings that dug grooves into my skin, but the pulse of resolve in my chest was sharper. I played, dealing with every screech by trying again, searching for the elusive moment when something beautiful emerged. Most of the time it didn't, but sometimes when no one was watching or rolling their eyes, my bow found a golden thread. That night at dinner I barely spoke. My family orbited each other in silence, only breaking for the scrape of a spoon, the flicker of the football game on the TV, and the occasional murmur about bills. Beside my glass, my father had left a stack of tuition applications with the generic promise, acquisci ti reciben, here they'll actually want you. The other side of that message hung between us, nobody wants what you want, Hector. Weeks blurred into months. Whenever I practiced, someone accidentally opened my door to look for laundry or slipped in for their charger. My siblings boxed their suspicions into half-jokes, El Mozart Villamelon, the fake little Mozart, and mimed exaggerated violin solos at me in the hallway. Sometimes in the street, boys from the block shouted out the infamous video. I kept playing, not because I thought I was good, but because every other thing in my life made me feel like a ghost. Only in the feel of the strings could I find my way back to a real body. Then the calls from music schools came, rejections, all of them. One night my mother found me stringing my bow in the dark. She sat beside me, the mattress denting under her weight, and stroked a loose strand of my hair. "Mijo, why put yourself through this? Play for fun maybe, but don't starve to death chasing un pequeño capricho." Her voice turned soft. "Papa worries so much." "I can't stop," I whispered. "This is the only thing I can do that feels real." "But Hector, it doesn't make sense, not here." Her hand slid from my head and she left, no anger, just tiredness. Next morning, I missed my bus and walked to work, alone with the city's din. The markets pumped with music, fruit vendors argued, perfume and oil thickened the air. My world shrank to a tunnel of steps and the music lying dormant in my backpack. I watched my friends move on, some to office jobs, some into construction. I scraped by working at a copy shop, running photocopies for university students and secretaries. During breaks, I'd pull out my violin and play quietly behind the recycling bins, because management didn't tolerate noise. Once, a girl from UNAM heard and smiled, but mostly I was background static. The ridicule faded from outright to subtle and then into pity. My cousin stopped mocking me, he had his own struggles now, hustling moto deliveries, and my friends checked in less and less. I ached for applause but would have settled for a small nod. The only audience I kept was silence itself. It tolerated every note, even my failures. I started listening obsessively. To YouTube orchestras, to rolling thunder from a storm, to the patterns of traffic on Avenida Insurgents. Every noise could be music. I posted clips of myself playing to almost no followers. Anonymous, shaky-handed performances in my bedroom, on my lunch break, at the park when it rained. One day, I filmed myself improvising on a piece by Manuel Ponce under the skinny shade of a jacaranda tree. I finished, pressed post, and forgot about it until something peculiar happened the next morning. My phone buzzed non-stop, not mockery this time, but shares. A string player I followed, a woman from Argentina, commented, Hermoso, mi recordaste mi abuelo, beautiful, you reminded me of my grandfather. My video bounced from one page to another, gathering thousands of views. Then an email came, simple as a sigh, Hector saw your video. Would you like to join our summer workshop? Scholarships available. It was from a small private conservatory in Buenos Aires. The sum of the scholarship wasn't enough, but my copy shop boss, who'd always pretended not to notice my violin, quietly advanced me my year's Christmas bonus. My grandmother remembered an old friend in Monterey who could put me up to save money on flights. Even my dad, silent and stoic, pressed a folded note into my hand. It's not much, Hijo, but it will help. At the airport, my mother hugged me, eyes shining, and whispered, "Don't let them steal your music." The first few days in Buenos Aires, I felt like a ghost haunting a cathedral. I heard real prodigies in the hallways, children who played sarasate with their eyes closed, a Japanese girl who never missed a note, but I learned. I stayed late, practicing on borrowed instruments with souls older than my own. A teacher heard my improvisation and invited me to join a small ensemble. You have something raw, Hector, don't waste it trying to hide. Years climbed by and I built a new version of myself, piece by piece, a friend who could laugh, a musician unafraid of risk. When the workshop ended, a Venezuelan cellist contacted me about playing for her modern quartet in Santiago. I left Argentina for Chile, then Spain, then Germany, always moving, always playing. I played in tunnels, bars, and concert halls. I slept on couches, shared bread and wine with strangers. My accent thickened and frayed. My Spanish layered itself with the vowels of new places. Then one winter night in Seville, I played a solo at a small festival. A representative from an international music foundation lingered afterward. He handed me his card. My hands shook worse than on my first day before an audience. A few months later, I recorded an album of classical works woven with improvisations, echoes of Mexico, Buenos Aires, the Berlin S-Bahn. The album spread quietly, remarkably, crowdfunded by old friends and new. I didn't get famous by any grand measure, but among those who knew, I mattered. By the time I returned to Mexico City, almost a decade had passed. The city had bulged outward. New glass buildings cut the skyline, but the streets below still tasted of dust and tamales. As I walked through Colonia's Roma and Doctors, I recognized some faces and missed others. My apartment's old courtyard mosaic was cracked with weeds, but the birds still sang at dawn. I called my parents. They were wary and delighted. Cautious pride sharpened their voices, as if not daring to hope too big. My father's hair had turned mostly grey. My mother's hands trembled when they held my cheeks. Days later the calls started, old classmates, relatives, neighbours I'd barely spoken to as a kid. Someone somehow had heard about the album. One afternoon, over a plate of pozole in our kitchen, my cousin blurted, "I heard you've got a concert. Acqui in DF, that true or just more social media?" He was smirking, but his eyes betrayed a tremor of curiosity. I nodded, "It's at the Sala Nezahual Quartal." He choked on his coca. My father looked up from his crossword, alarmed. "That's where the Philharmonic plays." I nodded again, my hands didn't shake. I ate my pozole quietly. The next week, posters unfurled across the city, on metro walls, pinned to the notice board in my old school, Hector Martinez Recital de Regresa, a program with Vivaldi, Ponce, and my own arrangement of traditional Sons Huasticos. A Facebook post swelled with comments, and this time none snickered. Invitations arrived for my family. I made sure there were seats for every cousin, uncle, and neighbor who'd told me to quit. On the night of the concert, my mother wore her wedding shawl over a simple blouse. My father dressed in a suit he hadn't worn since my sister's graduation. My cousin arrived late, nearly bumping his chair down the aisle. Backstage, the air clung close, so many years of dreams and humiliation pressing against me, growing light under the glow of stage bulbs. My hands felt alive but untroubled. The silence before walking on was immense, merciful. The world paused. When I stepped on stage, the parquet seats brimmed with faces, friends old and new, students who must have followed my scattered videos. My family clustered near the front. I caught my cousin's eyes. Wide, skeptical, clinging to his bravado, I lifted my violin. I played through the program, Vivaldi like electricity, Ponce trembling and lush, my own sons pulsing with the city's beating heart. I let the difficult notes ring. I didn't try to be perfect. In that room, my years of playing to unfamiliar audiences and empty halls poured into each phrase. I felt the city move under me, the wail of a traffic jam on Reformer, the hush of rain on tin roofs. There was a moment at the peak of my arrangement when I closed my eyes and remembered that silent, small room. The laughter, the muttering, the touch of my mother's hand before she left me in the dark, that was the sound I played into. Into that silence I gave back what I had gathered, resolve hard-won, still clean and undimmed. The last note rang out into the hush. I lowered my bow. For a heartbeat, nothing, not even a cough. Then applause, soft at first, gentle as sunrise on the city's fractured skyline. Then it swelled and I saw people rise, saw tears on my mother's cheeks, my father clapping impossibly hard, my cousin's open mouth, astonished and wordless. Afterward, backstage, my family crowded around. My little sister, now taller than me, pressed her cheek to mine and whispered, "Pardon, Hector, pardon pour rierme." I held her tight, unable to speak. My cousin approached, sheepish but sincere. He looked at the violin in my hand, then at me. "Nunca pensé que lo lograrías, primo." "I never thought you'd do it, cousin." I smiled, just a small smile. Years ago, I would have demanded an apology, some grand gesture. I no longer needed it. "It was never about you thinking so," I said quietly, "but I'm glad you're here to see it." He nodded. We stood in silence together. No laughter now, only the dense, generous hush left by honest music. The city stretched out beyond the concert hall, noisy and forgiving, its wounds healed over with the roots of 1,000 jacaranda trees. I stepped into the night with my family, taking in the living, breathing world, the one I'd never really left, and in which, against every sound and silence, I had finally arrived.